Now joining me is Republican Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri. He's a member, of course, of the Republican leadership team. Senator Blunt, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you. Good to hear that these boys are getting out of that cave, and hopefully today will be good news for all of them and their families.
Sometimes it's just nice to cover a good news story after all of that. All right, let me begin actually in Asia and in North Korea and what happened there. Mike Pompeo was there this weekend. It seems like the meetings did not go well. I'm sure there's some people thinking, I told you so when it comes to the North Koreans. You were skeptical. You were on here right before when the summit was announced. You were skeptical. The president tweeted, we had nothing to worry about within 24 hours of the summit. 26 days later, they're calling the Americans gangsters.
Well, you know, Yogi Bear grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and this deja vu all over again. This is standard operating procedure for 3 generations now of dictators in North Korea, and I hope we, at the end, come to success. But I think nobody should be surprised by foot dragging. Nobody should be surprised by saying one thing, and then apparently that's not what maybe they meant to say when they said it. This is troubled now 4 U.S. presidents, and I hope President Trump and Secretary Pompeo are more successful than anybody's been up till now.
But I got to ask, let me play here. This was the president within hours after meeting with Kim Jong-un.
We're going to de-nuke North Korea. It's going to start immediately. As soon as he arrives, he's going to start a process that's going to make a lot of people very happy and very safe. I mean, he's de-nuking the whole place, and he's going to start very quickly. I think he's going to start now. They're getting rid of a missile testing site. They're doing so much now. So it's a process, and it's really moving rapidly.
He naive. Is this the naivete of a first-term president?
You know, I think he's optimistic. I think he's genuinely optimistic about anything he is involved in at the time. At the same time, I think what you've got to look at here is actions, and as long as the actions are to continue to keep the economic pressure on North Korea, actions here will speak louder than words, and only those kinds of actions will ultimately bring North Korea to the place we'd like them to be.
Since the president we gave a lot to the North Koreans for international prestige, that moment. Is it time for the United States they threw a high, hard one at the United States by calling us gangsters. Is it time for the president to announce, okay, the military exercises with South Korea are back on?
Well, I thought it was a mistake to give the military exercises up. As you know, when I was on here the last time, I said the one thing I wouldn't give up would be our presence, certainly, in South Korea. I'd hate to give up our ability to act interoperably with our South Korean allies. And the President and the Secretary Mattis, Secretary Pompeo have to reconsider that, I would think, at some future time, particularly if these negotiations appear to be going on for a long time. And that's what you'd have to expect from the North Koreans is, again, foot dragging, standard operating procedure. Let's see how much world attention we can get, and then at the end of the day, how much economic assistance the North Koreans would be able to get.
So the president stopped the happy talk publicly? Is he his own worst enemy here? Overselling, under-delivering?
Well, again, I think what you've got to look at is actions as opposed to his optimism about coming up with a final solution. I hope the president sticks with the sanctions and continues to work with others in the neighborhood to maintain the sanctions as well. That means Japan, that means South Korea, that means China.
All right. The president has another tricky summit coming up with another authoritarian figure, this one by the name of Vladimir Putin. Are you nervous considering how the Kim Jong-un meeting went, where the president gave a lot more than was expected, including getting rid of the military exercises? Are you concerned, for instance, he's going to hand Crimea to the Russians?
Well, I would hope not. I would hope not. I think the Russian discussion about Crimea, about Ukraine generally, particularly the eastern part of Ukraine, where clearly the Russians continue to have military forces there. What's happening in Syria and Iran, I think it's fine to talk to the Russians, but the president should clearly understand that neither the Russians nor dictators like Kim Jong-un are going to be charmed by anybody. They are very cold-blooded, calculating. Well, Putin would be in that category.
I was just going to say both Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin seem to have an idea of what they want out of these summits. Does President Trump know what he wants?
Well, I think he's surrounded himself with a pretty good team. I think
does he listen to him?
I hope so. Pompeo, Bolton, Mattis, all should, and General Kelly, all are giving him the right kind of advice. I think he's comfortable with the team he's put around himself for the first time in his presidency, and hopefully that will show up in these talks.
I want to ask you about 7 of your Republican colleagues went over to Russia. 6 of them, most of them were from the Appropriations Committee. No Democrat was with them. Why?
Well, I think there's merit to talking.
This looks like Russia's attempt, though, to get rid of sanctions.
Well, hopefully it doesn't work in that way, and I don't think it'll work in that way. I think there's nothing wrong with talking to the Russians. There's nothing wrong with the president talking to Putin. There's nothing wrong with my colleagues talking to the Russians, but you just got to understand who you're talking to. These are people who run a dictatorial government. They're people who are exerting all the influence they can everywhere they can. And they don't have many resources, but they're making the most.
Were you invited to go on that trip and you declined?
I did not go on that trip, but I was going to be in Missouri for 4th of July parades and reopening the arch, and had a lot of things already scheduled.
There's a report this morning that your leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, is recommending to the president of his 4 finalists for the Supreme Court, he believes that Raymond Kethridge and Thomas Hardiman would be easier confirmation fights than Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Barrett, and he's recommending that he would go in that direction. Where are you?
Well, I'm looking to see who the president nominates, not trying to anticipate who that might be. I haven't talked to the president about this, nor have I talked to Senator McConnell about it. But I think we can confirm any of the 4 names being mentioned. There are reasons to look in both the Pennsylvania and the Michigan nominee.
You like that's Kethridge and Hardiman. You lean more toward their...
You know, I'm not sure I'm leaning anywhere on those 4 nominees. I think they'll all be, they're good judges. I think they'd be fine justices of the Supreme Court. I think the president has to think about it. Who is the easiest to get confirmed here? And I expect we'll do that on sort of a normal timetable of a couple of months.
Your colleague Lindsey Graham here last week said he believes Roe is essentially settled law. He believes in precedent and wants to see a nominee that also believes in precedent. Where are you on this?
Well, I think these judges, whichever one's nominated, should follow the Ginsburg strategy, which is no hints, no foretelling of how they're going to determine.
It's the 21st century.
Happens.
21st century. I think the American people should know. No?
You don't think the notorious RBG standard is good enough?
This is the 21st century where we expect everything.
No, I think we expect judges to judge the case that comes up before them. I'm not a lawyer. This is maybe a pretty good month not to be a lawyer, but precedent's important, but precedent's not the only thing. We have had bad precedents that were reversed after decades.
That's not a non-starter for you.
What is not a non-starter?
The idea, stare decisis, that if somebody doesn't believe in that,
I think
you're not.
I think judges need to look at the case. The court needs to look at the case and determine that case on the facts of the case.
Senator Ward, I'm going to have to leave it there. Republican
Hey, good to be with you.
Thanks for coming on and sharing your views. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.